I'm excited about this one because this is something that can help millions of men for free with their emotional and mental well-being, which has a positive ripple effect for everyone, right? I know this from personal experience, how valuable this approach is, but honestly, a very small percentage of us are using it. Now, a really well-known psychiatrist just put it into words on a huge platform, and that's got me a little inspired here. So if you're a man or you have one in your life, you will want to check this out. As you may already know, emotional work, it's not really speaking men's language a lot of the time, and we don't really want to just talk about our feelings, but like what else is out there. And this is where things get either kind of bubbling up inside or turning to corners of the internet that are not particularly useful. So I'm going to let Dr. K set the stage here for why this is kind of the dynamic.
I think we make a huge mistake in the field of psychiatry, which is that somewhere along the way, we got into this idea that talk therapy is the gold standard. Talk therapy is the gold standard for women. 70% of psychiatric patients historically have been women. 70% of therapists and psychiatrists historically have been women.
So what do men need to do to be better off?
That's a good question, right? But I wanted to set the stage here and jump to a point later where he gets into some particular specifics. But it is interesting to hear this point, right? That it's the gold standard for women. And there's also a segment where he talks about even in couples therapy and things like that, men often say they feel outclassed. Like they're not as good at connecting to their feelings or talking about them. But again, where else do we go? Well, action-oriented stuff, discipline, hustle culture, work on myself mentally, and that can lead to burnout and other things. So I really love, and you will see why, where he takes this next.
I mentioned that, we thought talk therapy was the gold standard.
Yeah.
So I think men especially need to do a lot more stuff in their body.
Because my wife did it and she was like,
When he said my wife did it, they were talking about breath work a little before this. This is like over 40 minutes later from when that door was opened.
So this was something I remember in 2012. I was in medical school. I'd done research at Harvard for a couple of years. I got an email from a cousin of mine in India, and he's like, "Hey, there's this thing called the emotional freedom technique. Like, what do you think about it?" And I was like, "It sounds like it's BS."
Mm-hmm.
Emotional freedom technique is EFT tapping.
And then he's like, "Shouldn't we?" So we got into this debate about it. I looked at some research. It didn't seem very convincing. Many years later, now we have a ton of studies on EFT. Which is similar to kind of like tapping is what they call it. So there's like trauma is like stored in the body in some ways. And there are now studies that actually seem like pretty solid.
Yeah.
Now this is important, right? Because Dr. K presents a lot of studies on his channel as a psychiatrist. He's someone in the work that he does, knows how to read studies. And him saying this is looking pretty solid is a good sign. And by the way, if you look on something like PubMed, you will see that not only are there a lot of studies with tapping, but it's dealing with some pretty serious stuff where there's these promising results, including things like PTSD with veterans, chronic pain. So it's really good to be hearing this.
Yeah.
That there's ways of bringing stuff out through the body. Mm-hmm. We see this also in masculine communities of when you get dumped, what do we tell people to do? Hit the gym. Mm-hmm. Right? So physical, and if we think about emotions, we think about emotions as mental. They're not mental. They're physical too.
Now that is a huge doorway for men, right? Because it's normal, like he said, to talk about hitting the gym when you're going through something. But we don't really talk about like the underlying shame, the embarrassment, the other things that might be there either going through the breakup or what contributed to some of the relationship dynamics in the first place, right? The avoidance, whatever it might be. Now we understand on a human level that we have a physical component to what we feel emotionally, right? The knots in the stomach, tightness in the chest during anxiety, nausea that can show up out of nowhere, or especially if you're going to like ask someone out or talk about getting a raise, right? But now knowing that these body responses can be worked with directly with something like tapping, if you know what to do, this can actually process the deeper underlying emotional material that can be the primary or one of the primary drivers behind that anxiety, behind that avoidance. This is huge, right? It doesn't require you to sit down and go talk about it. You can tap and tune into the physical sensation itself as a doorway and actually process things. So even if you are a man who's been interested in this kind of work, like my own journey, which I'm way into this stuff now, even that's really more mind-oriented in the beginning, right? Things can feel a little abstract. I'm trying to think of things a different way, trying to release things. Or you're trying to take on behaviors. Be confident. What does that look like? What actions do I take? Hopefully, if I do and say confident things, I will get results that will then make me feel confident. So it's totally dependent on the external world, which is why you see so much of the men type material just being about like, do this, say this, hit the gym, do this to look and act confident and get these external results. So we've got tapping mentioned. Now, are millions of men flocking to tapping now that this was said on such a huge podcast? No, but I want to help that, right? Part of that is if you search for EFT tapping, again, it's not going to be stuff that really grabs men's attention for the most part. EFT is open source. Anyone can upload content around it. But because things tend to be skewed to a certain percentage, right? You will see a lot of things that's like a YouTube short, soft music playing, saying, tap on these points to manifest your dream partner. It's not, grabbing men's like, yeah, I really got to check that out. Or they don't know what it is, right? There isn't the context like Dr. K has presented here. We're like, oh, I'm working through emotions through the body. You just don't know what you're seeing or why to do this. Also to know that what you hear in some of these studies with these results with things like PTSD and trauma, those are generally with a practitioner, often using clinical EFT. I have a certification in that. It's a particular way of working with what comes up and navigating, especially sensitive or topics where there's trauma involved. So tapping is amazing. You can do it for free, but also you don't want to set yourself up for disappointment where you're like, hey, I tapped on anxiety and it didn't all go away. Let me throw it out. Because I hear that too, right? Not knowing the context, that there's really different degrees of working with it. But to learn it is free and it can be so huge. Even to just know, oh, I can go to the body sensation, right? I feel a tightness. I don't know, man. I just feel a tightness in my chest when I go to do this thing and I don't want to talk about it. You can do tapping with that. Even though there's this tightness in my chest and I don't want to talk about it, right? You're working directly with the physiology where the emotions are also stored, where trauma is also stored, right? This is becoming more and more understood. So what could have previously felt like a disadvantage, I don't really know how to talk about things, I don't really connect to my feelings, but I feel the knot in my stomach, you are good to go. So much progress can be made here. So I'm curious if you have any reluctance to exploring this or not sure where to start, or a woman who's interested in introducing this to a man. If you have any questions around that, let me know in the comments. If you want to try some tapping right now on a video, I'm going to link to one right here and also link to a conversation with another man, the man in the space, in my opinion, Brad Yates, where we are talking more about tapping, men, and emotional work. Hope this helps.